We have a question today from Gaston_F. What's the best way to go about fixing anterior pelvic tilt causing pain in hams and glutes? Okay, it's a good question. It's common, so it's more like a postural issue, right? The thing is, people worry about posture and they worry about kind of their resting position. So if they're at work, like how they sit or if they should stand. It doesn't matter in what position you're not moving. It matters that you're not moving. So there's no such thing as bad posture. The only bad posture is static posture. So the fact that you have an anterior pelvic tilt could potentially be because of how you're positioning yourself all day, but it's the fact you're not moving all day is usually the issue. Now when it comes to hamstrings and glutes, we got to think the position of the pelvis and the way we sort of set out the path of least resistance is going to matter. So take, for example, like a lying hamstring curl, like a prone hamstring curl. If you're in this extended position when you start and you have this anterior pelvic tilt, you're only going to know strength in your hamstrings from this anteriorly tilted position, as that ischium tube sort of adds length to the hamstrings and you use that elastic property of muscle to start curling. Now, what you're going to want to do is create a posterior tilt in the pelvis first, and you're going to realize that you don't have much strength in your hamstrings in this position, right? So what happens is your body always reverts when you're squatting and deadlifting to that place where it knows strength. So it ends up here, that lengthened position, and then you start getting hamstring or glute kind of tendonitis. So what you should be doing is when you load the hamstrings and glutes in isolation, try and create a posterior pelvic tilt so that strength can come from the hamstrings, from contractility, not elasticity. The same thing's true with the core muscles. A lot of times when people train core, they train it by letting the pelvis drop down and the rib cage flare up, but that's not training the function of the core, it's training the action of the core, right? Going through flexion, extension, that's how people usually train their abs. So what I would do is make sure, again, that we're training strength in a more posterior pelvic tilt, because if we don't have strength in isolation in these positions, what's then going to happen is we're going to revert to the position where we've been training that strength. We're going to find that path of least resistance. So kind of going through some cueing to rewire where that path of least resistance is from. Dinstagram asks, front squats and overhead press for training and powerlifting. Now, good question. There's a lot of debate about like these kind of fringe accessory movements. I would say these are really good ways to build indirect strength. And what I mean by that is they're good screening tools to test end ranges of joint motions that we're not otherwise going to find ourselves in when we're going through the competition lifts of, in this case, the low bar squat and the bench press, right? So if you're pressing in the overhead plane and then you start experiencing pain or discomfort or instability, that gives us 90 degrees worth of information, right? Because if we didn't press overhead and we only did competition bench press, we could be missing input that's going to be afforded to us in this plane above the arc of the bench press. So overhead press, it might not directly build strength, like building strength in the shoulders for your particular bench press style might not carry over as well as you would like it to, and then your time could be spent doubling down in the position or the plane that you're actually lifting in. But if long term you're missing that information that could help you stave off an injury, then the overhead press is super effective. Front squat, same thing. You're going to overload the quads more, take some of the stress off the low back. Now, depending on what your low bar competition squat looks like, having more quad strength might not necessarily be beneficial, although I could make the argument that it always will be, but it's breaking you out of these planes, having some variability in your training and not reinforcing some of these potentially harmful positions that do give us a mechanical advantage when we compete. So I think variability is huge. I think those two particular examples are great ways to indirectly build strength. So Instagram, thanks for the question. It's a common misconception with accessory movements in powerlifting.